Because it's a UK extreme weather video, what should you try not to do if it's raining cats and dogs? Stand in a poodle. 2019 paper 1, UK extreme weather. This is going to be the biggest video of this set because so little of it came up last year that there is a chance that there could be quite a lot of it this year. So, introduction to UK weather. We have got to start with the word that strikes fear into geography teachers' hearts when they hear it could come up in the exam is depressions. A depression there on the left-hand side, that is what a depression will look like on a synoptic chart. It's an incredibly common UK weather event due to the different directions that our winds can come from. Right, look at that diagram over there with me. Let's go through the numbers first. You can see numbers, the lowest number there, 972. Those numbers are what we call isobars, and they measure air pressure. Okay, so the lower the number, that means that there is less weight of air at that location. The higher the number, I think 1028 is the highest number on there. No, it's not 1032. The higher the number, that means that the air is weighing more in that location. So, something you've got to remember is when you have low pressure, it means air is rising. So 972 is the centre of low pressure. Now picture it, low pressure, air rising. What would you see if you looked up? If you looked up, you would see clouds because air is rising, cooling, condensing, forming clouds. If we go to northern Italy, where it's 1032, if you looked up there, you wouldn't see any clouds because the air is sinking. That's why you've got a higher figure because the air weighs more in northern Italy at that time. So, first thing to remember with UK weather, if you see low pressure, it's very likely to be raining. Right, let's get into this diagram a bit more. You should be able to see some blue, supposedly, they look like icicles coming across the screen there in the west of Ireland, those blue triangles. The blue triangles is the front, and it's a cold front. What that means is, along that blue line, that's as far as cold air has managed to get to. Whereas, if you look at, therefore, the red circles, which just clip northeast Scotland, that's as far as warm air has managed to travel, and they are called fronts. Now, if you see any question or you see a diagram about these, let's make it easy. If you see a front, it will rain. If you see a front, it will rain. On that location, at that time, it will be raining. Other little bit of advice, the cold air, the cold front, always chases the warm front. And as a result, look where the warm front is at the moment. You have to picture that the cold front will be chasing in after it. So that cold air is going to track from west across to the east to try and catch up with that warm front. That is where the cold front will go. And as a result, in the next few hours, if we take it across, firstly, Eastern Ireland is going to get rain, and then Cornwall and Wales are going to get rain, and then later on the day, northeast England will also be getting some rain as well. What I want you to do, just quickly, if you picture where the G and the O are on the diagram there, that is an area of warm air chasing after the warm front. Where if you look for the number 1004 and the number 1996, that's all going to be cold air travelling behind the cold front. Because remember, front just means it's where the cold air has got to. So, as I've said previously, this is a very common set of weather events in the UK. What you have to picture, and it is tricky, is that cold air is descending from the north, from the polar regions to make it easier. That cold air that is coming from the north and heading south crashes into the warm air that's travelling from the tropics. Okay, when that happens, the cold front, quite literally because it's cold air, it's really dense, gets in underneath the warm air, and the warm air is forced to rise. That's why along any front that you see, particularly the cold front, we're talking about that now, you will see clouds and rainfall. Where the warm front has got to on the map, just put your finger across the warm front, that's going to be crashing into colder air because we've travelled further north. When that crashes to colder air, the warm air has to rise above the cold air, and that means cooling, condensing, clouds forming, and precipitation. So if you see a front, it will rain. If you see a front, it will rain. Remember, low pressure, your strong winds, air rushes towards that space as well, so you end up with more rising air at a low pressure area. Now then, the sun that's just popped on there, in terms of your weather conditions, a warm front will always be rain and a cold front will always be rain. The area in between will be sunny and less cloudy because air is not being forced to rise there. So a recap, if you get anything like this is a thing to remember. Warm front, you'll see rain. Cold front, you will see rain. In between, you will see sun. Across a whole day, a place can expect to get rain on a warm front, followed by a sunny period, followed by rain as the cold front travels across it. So if you get a depressions question, that is what you need to remember. Part 2 then, UK extreme weather. We need to look at our evidence. You could be asked a very difficult question regarding evidence of UK extreme weather. Just as a quick reminder, extreme weather occurs only in exceptional conditions. It is not the normal conditions at that time of year, and or alternatively, it is weather that lasts for a lot longer than expected. So it might be in the summer months we would expect to have warmer conditions, but however, if that lasted for 6 months, then that would be considered extreme weather. It happens rarely, however, it's becoming more common and becoming more extreme. Some examples of extreme weather in the UK are there on the right hand side. We've got some blue text and red text. Heavy rain, gales, floods, heavy snowfall, thick fog, and the tail end of hurricanes coming across the Atlantic are all examples of low pressure, where the red there is high pressure. So in terms of evidence, we could be asked a question saying, is extreme weather becoming more common? And if that comes up, we've got this lovely table, there it is, this lovely table that we can get out of jail with. Have we got any evidence the UK is warmer? Yes. The 5 hottest years on record are the last 5 years. Full stop. That is your evidence that the UK is becoming warmer. Across the entire planet, there is a 0.85 degree warming of planet Earth since 1885. And what that all means is that heatwave events, such as those seen last year, will become more common. That's evidence that the UK is becoming warmer. What about wetter? Well, again, that 0.85 degree warming means there is more evaporation of water in the Atlantic Ocean and the English Channel. Therefore, if more water or more moisture is rising, more cooling, more condensing, more clouds forming, more precipitation. Every year you get 3 more days of extreme rainfall a year, apparently, in the United Kingdom. And what that means is events like Boscastle flooding, which we've studied, and the Somerset Levels flooding, which some of you may have seen in class, will become more common. What about the tail end of hurricanes? We've got warmer and wetter. This is almost a combination of the two, I suppose. Because of that 0.85 degree warming and a 3 millimetre higher sea level every year, we'll have stronger hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the UK can't get hurricanes, but what we can get is the tail end of hurricanes. After they have travelled to, let's just pick the typical one, they crashed into Florida. Those hurricanes then track back across the Atlantic Ocean, travelling from west to east, and then travel across the Atlantic Ocean and can hit into the UK. If temperatures are warmer, which they are, if sea levels are higher every year, which they are, it means that those hurricanes can be more forceful because they will approach the UK with more power. If it's a lower pressure system, because of a warmer ocean temperature, then therefore we can expect stronger winds and also more rainfall. Your example of that, Hurricane Alex, it was the one of the factors that led to the Boscastle flooding. This will become more likely to happen as hurricanes will track with more power back across the Atlantic Ocean. So events like Boscastle could be considered more likely to happen. All right, the next one, this is just the focus on low pressure. You've already seen the explanation of what extreme weather is. We are now going to look at Boscastle for heavy rains, floods, and as well as the tail end of hurricanes. Little fact box there about Boscastle. You've got your date, you've got the amount of rainfall in an hour. This is your extreme weather case study. Let's have a little look at the, actually no we won't, we will just talk about a convergent zone quickly. Convergent zone at Boscastle, what you've got to remember is Hurricane Alex tracking across the Atlantic Ocean is one sort of weather system, if you like. What you also have is evaporation from the English Channel. Remember, this is an August flood event, so you have quite a lot of moisture rising from the English Channel because the sun is warming the ocean, which is evaporating and warming the air above it and rising. And essentially what we have is the Hurricane Alex weather system crashes into the English Channel convectional rainfall system, and they hit into each other at Boscastle. And it was just really bad luck for Boscastle that they happened to hit there. Had the two collided over the ocean, there wouldn't have been any effect for Boscastle or anywhere else in Cornwall for that matter. Okay then, obviously it's a low pressure system. What were our effects? 100 cars washed away and 100 houses damaged, £4.5 million of insurance claims. If you get an effects question, remember, try and categorise your effects. Those would be your social effects. Economic effects, Harbour Light Cafe destroyed, £15 million worth of damage in total. And look at that, the benefit of future tourism. Remember, these effects can be positive. Environmental there, we've got rubbish and debris being dropped. We've got trees being uprooted. Remember, if you're writing trees, give a specific. Oak trees would be much more credit-worthy than just trees. And we've also got habitats destroyed. Come on, you know this. When you get anything about animals, give an example. Dormouse, sparrowhawk, etc. So that's the Boscastle effects. What about the effects of high pressure, or in this case a heat wave? Don't forget what an extreme weather system is over there. Let's have a little look at high pressure. Our 2018 heat wave is your example at the moment. Happened across the UK, 30-degree temperatures being recorded. Essentially what has happened here is you have a big block of air that's come from essentially the Sahara Desert and Saudi Arabia area, has moved over the UK, and there's so much air sinking that the low pressure systems can't push it out of the way, and that's why this heat wave lasted around about 3 months with really minimal rainfall because air was sinking. Right then, effects. Social, we had 1,000 additional deaths, mainly elderly on the grounds that they've dehydrated. But there were some social positives as well. Archaeological discoveries, because reservoir levels dropped so much and river levels dropped, it meant that we were discovering Roman settlements and Viking burial grounds, etc., because the water had essentially revealed its secrets below. Economic, you had spinach failures, you had crop failures, but you had positives as well. You had an increase in staycations where people opt to stay in the UK rather than go abroad for their holiday because it was so warm. You also had Tesco reported record sales across the August bank holiday weekend. 2 million cases of beer sold on that weekend. 2 million cases. A population of 70 million in the UK. That is an insanely high figure. Environmental impacts of high pressure in the UK, where you had wildfires, for example on Dartmoor and Bodmin Moor. But as a positive, you had the germination of heather. For heather to grow, there actually needs to be a wildfire. That is how it germinates and how more seeds can be dropped, essentially, for want of a better word. And you eventually end up with more heather growing after a wildfire. So there are positives and negatives to extreme weather extreme weather events. You have positive effects and negative effects. Right, UK extreme weather responses. Again, don't forget what extreme weather means. It's there. In terms of extreme weather responses, this is the tricky one, really. Remember, because it's a response, it's a management, you're aiming to protect value and reduce vulnerability. Okay? You're aiming to protect value and reduce vulnerability. So what managements did we have? Well, we had Management's there for the high pressure 2018 heatwave. The Northern Ireland government put in a hose pipe ban. It was also considered in southeast England as well. In terms of the heatwave, because of the risk of wildfires, fire breaks were put in on Bodmin Moor and Dartmoor, which is the idea where you intentionally cut down a set of trees and quite literally set as a controlled fire a part of woodland. Which what that means is if then a fire does start, the fire reaches the break and can't jump across to get to the rest of the trees. So you actually intentionally burn down some trees to protect the rest of the forest. And that happened on Bodmin Moor and Dartmoor. In addition, businesses started managing the 2018 heatwave by putting controls on the number of goods sold. For example, lettuces. The idea being that knowing that there were less lettuces being grown in Spain that year because of the very, very dry conditions, Tesco put in a system of one lettuce per customer to try and make sure they actually had enough to go round. What about the low pressure 2004 Boscastle flood events? Well, a new £4.5 million flood defence scheme in place. The Environment Agency's adopted that text message alert system in Boscastle. And don't forget those business open as usual signs used to make sure that tourists and locals continue to shop in the area. We will look at that again in terms of river management. It will come up in the rivers video for this. Don't forget, you could be asked about the success of the responses. If you are, just make sure you simply answer the question. Was it successful? Was it not successful?